everybody. Bob Ufer here in the chilly snake pit of Columbus, Ohio.
Elliott has the first down and more, and Elliott's going to have a touchdown.
Carr, watch out! Blake Carr, blazing speed. Can he get there? No, but he's down at the Ohio State 11.
Samuel cuts it back. Ohio State wins.
Stroud in trouble, and Stroud is sacked again.
There's nothing quite like the game.
Michigan versus Ohio State, the game of the day, the game of the year, the game of the decade. Call it what you will.
This is The Rivalry, sponsored by Elevated Integrity Construction.
This is the Rivalry Podcast. Jace, JP, and our good friend Ben Lennox joining the podcast this week. If this goes well, we'll have more guests in the future. But I've known Ben for a long time, and we probably will have no guests in the future. Make sure that while JP is pulling up Wheel Route, make sure that you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and make sure that you follow on Twitter at RivalPod or on Instagram at 1049 The River. Big thanks to our friends at Elevated Integrity Construction for sponsoring Season 4 of The Rivalry. If you're doing a home build, church build, you got a project, not only do they do construction, they will do the design element as well. Go with integrity. It's elevatedintegrity.com, elevatedintegrity.com. Mr. JP, spin that wheel. And as always, we are still not paying for the
We never will. We're not even going to act like we will at some point. I just like to bring it up
from time to time and see.
And it spins forever.
See if we can get a new question this week. Oh, is it going to?
Classic.
Favorite player.
A classic.
I'm here for
past
that.
or present. All right. Favorite player, past or present. Ben, I'm going to make you start.
Okay. I'm also going to answer for last week's, which was least favorite, past or present.
Nobody. Okay.
It was Jabril Peppers, hands down.
Jabril Peppers.
I hated Jabril Peppers. He unfairly won Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. He was like top 30 in most of his things, while Malik Hooker had 6 pick sixes that year. No big deal.
Malik Hooker still in the league?
He is. He plays for the Cowboys. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Just didn't know.
Does Jabril Peppers play?
New York?
I don't think so. I don't think he's there. I think he's somewhere, but I don't think it's there. But I can't stand Jabril Peppers. How about this week? I'll go back to favorite.
Okay.
It was Braxton Miller.
Okay.
Not a good passer. I'll admit that. We have a ton of those guys. Like Terrell Pryor was not a good passer. JT has all the passing records. Not a good passer. But he was so electric with the ball. It was so awesome to watch him just take off. Was Braxton the one that had that spinorama against Virginia Tech? Was that him? First game as a
I do
receiver.
remember that. That was good.
Braxton was also the guy who overthrew Devin Smith to give Michigan their one win against Ohio State in like 2011 or whatever.
I like how he threw that in there.
Luke Fickle year.
He's welcome anytime.
If Braxton doesn't miss Devin Smith...
Listen, if John O'Corn doesn't throw the ball 30 yards past the open receiver, we probably win that year too.
Terrible.
He is.
Listen to yourself.
I'm disappointed that I mentioned John O'Corn on this podcast.
You should.
I'm really sorry about that. Can we strike that?
One of my all-time favorite Twitter clips is the coach in the booth saying, "We've got what we want."
No,
and then saying,
John,
"No, John." And it just cuts to
It
us
is for me
picking the
too,
ball
because
off.
John O'Corn kind of went off the rails against Michigan after he left the program, so that's fine. JP, what about you?
I went with Penn State. I put Saquon as my favorite.
That's good.
I hate Penn State. They're Rutgers' rival. They always play Ohio State.
That's the reason to hate them.
You know what?
I'm sorry. We'll get to Rutgers later. I'm sorry.
It's already beginning. He's kicking me while I'm down.
Saquon is a good choice.
Saquon's a solid choice.
Thought you were going to keep talking while I took my drink of water.
No, I stopped intentionally, so we would be waiting on you.
Man, he burned Michigan, but Jahan Dotson was just really, really fun to watch on the Penn State side. He's still playing with the Commanders. Penn State has just had such good receivers over the years, from Allen Robinson, KJ Hamler, Jahan Dotson. Penn State, despite their quarterback play, has actually had some really electric wide receivers. So I'll go Jahan Dotson there. That's fine. All right, so we're already starting to bleed into Penn State. We're not going to go quite to Michigan just yet because Ohio State is on a bye this week. So let's go ahead and recap their game from this past weekend. A throttling of Michigan State. Michigan State's not a good football team. What are you taking away from that? Can you take anything out of that game?
It's tough because I was talking to somebody about this earlier. The offense is exactly what we expected. I mean,
would you say they are who we thought they were?
I feel like, we've said that before, but they are who we thought they were. They're electric, even with Henderson going down and Williams being out. I mean, Henderson still had himself a day. You go out there and you have Ibuka, you have Marvin Harrison Jr., you have Fleming, all go out there and have just incredible games. This Ohio State offense has just reloaded what they lost at the receiver position, and they're dangerous offensively. Defensively, Michigan State's atrocious. We knew they weren't going to do much outside of the early pick six and then a late game score. This game wasn't even really as close as it looked. It was over from the start.
Do you remember I think it was preseason where Peyton Thorne was on like the quarterback of the year watch list or whatever that thing is called?
To not watch list now.
At freezing cold takes. Honestly, seriously though.
Awful.
Ben, what do you see from that game? Can you take anything away from that?
Yeah, here's my issue, and it's been my issue all year. I think when we play better passers, our corners are going to lose us a football game.
Cam Brown.
And here's what's happening is Reed for Michigan State, their best play was throw the ball down the seam and he makes a play, and our corners are just standing there. Denzel Burke's been a liability all year. Cam Brown's too busy getting personal fouls and throwing his helmet on the sideline.
Like getting hurdled by Hassan Haskins, little things like that.
Even the Wisconsin game, Tanner McAllister made a heck of a play on the goal line, but if you watch the play, the receiver had the ball go through his hands. Tanner hit his leg. He didn't hit the ball. And so if he makes that catch, it's a different story. I think one of the garbage teams we played missed a guy deep who was 3 feet behind a guy, and it was just that Ohio State pressure. It's like, no, he's just not a good quarterback. But receivers are getting open, and our corners are getting bailed out because our offense is beating teams by 1,000.
And you're probably not going to see that. We were talking off mic, but you're probably not going to see that until Penn State, and then probably not until Michigan. Like those are really the two teams that are actually going to threaten Ohio State, or at least have the chance to, because Iowa doesn't have a good offense. I think you play Northwestern somewhere in there, and India. Like, I guess I'd throw.
I think we do play Maryland.
You do play Maryland at Maryland, so that's no disrespect to Tagovailoa. Like,
Baby Tua.
Baby Tua is going to be could be a problem because they do have a good offense. But I think that's fair. What I'm seeing from Ohio State is outside of the defensive side, there's not a lot of weakness to this team. So this hurts me to say this, but Ohio State should have been ranked the number 1 team in the country this past week. We have this
recorded on video and audio.
Ohio State should have been ranked number 1. Now, does it matter at this point? No, of course it doesn't. You're in early October. It's the AP poll. But the fact that Georgia got ranked over Ohio State after they played with their food against Kent State and then they should have lost to Mizzou, you're telling me that that's a better football team than Ohio State right now? Not a chance in the world.
Here's why I think it might matter. Because if Ohio State and the team up north can make their way up to 2-3 or 1-2 and then lose to one another, then they still might get both teams in the playoff. Because the winner of that game is going to go to the Big Ten Championship, which means the other one doesn't.
But the AP poll isn't going to determine that, right? It's the college football playoff.
Right. But where they rank them, one, because if they keep us 3-4, then, hey, we lost. Now they're going to drop to 5 or 6. And then, hey, it's harder to get 5-6 back in there if the other 3 teams win.
Yeah. This is as good an opportunity as the Big Ten has had to get both teams in. The Pac-12 isn't doing themselves any favors, especially if USC loses this week, or going forward too, but USC's got to go to Utah this week. The Pac-12 is done. Clemson is a fraud. We know that. Clemson jumping Michigan was also pretty laughable to me. But again, doesn't matter at this point. Michigan can right that ship as we go. But yeah, this is a good chance for the Big Ten to get 2 teams in. Michigan, don't screw this up, please. We're going to replay that sometime down the line.
Screw it up all you want.
Here's my only other critique of Ohio State was, and JP, you and I were talking about this off mic too, but the Travion Henderson injury where he went down. Am I being a homer, or does CJ Stroud have to throw a block there?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
I'm watching, and Ben, you interacted on Twitter with this. I'm watching this, and I'm going, how do you not at least even attempt to slow down a guy who's coming at a running back who's already dealing with an injury? He basically put his hands up and got out of the way, and I don't understand that type of leadership. Am I overthinking this?
It's tough because while I agree with you, we also have Mayan Williams who can come back and do. It's like if you lose, would you prefer to lose Henderson or Stroud?
But see, that's a false dichotomy, though. You don't have to lose one or the other.
I don't know. I don't want my quarterback taking any sort of a hit unless he absolutely needs to. I don't feel like he necessarily had to as a football player or as like a teammate. I want to see him go after that just so that the trust is still there.
And I'm not saying you got to plow into the guy. I'm just saying slow him
you got
down
to do a little bit of something rather than literally just getting out of the way.
To me, it looked like he avoided the block. And I was telling this to Jace off the air. It reminded me of when Cam Newton refused to dive on the fumble in the Super Bowl.
A good
because
comparison.
He didn't want to get hurt. And I get that. And I don't want to see CJ hurt either, but step in his way, push him, make him go around you.
Something.
Because that defender also can't just level the quarterback as a blocker. But CJ saw him, stepped out of the way, hoping that Travion would also get out of the way, and then had to look back and watch his teammate get flipped.
And that's where, again, as a Michigan guy, I voiced my complaints against CJ Stroud on this podcast for 4 seasons. Not really for 4 seasons. He's not been on the team that long. But, but it goes back to me with the whole, my Heisman moment was called back, and we had the flu, and like all these excuses. I don't run the football. All these things that pile up that I go, that's really soft. Like, that's not good football leadership. I don't know. That's just, he threw for 6 touchdowns. Like, he's a good player. I just question, why would you not get in that guy's way a little bit more? Ohio State is on a bye this week, so I'm guessing that you probably will win this week.
We sure hope.
Ohio State is favored against the bye. Before we jump to Michigan, we have a funeral we need to conduct. Rutgers to the Rose Bowl.
I hate this.
JP, it was what I said last week was that Rutgers you only had to finish 3rd in the Big Ten. You didn't have to be over Ohio State. You didn't have to be over Michigan. You didn't even necessarily have to be over Penn State. But you got to finish like top 3 or 4. And I said, you've got a lot of winnable games on the schedule, and Nebraska was the first and foremost one that you should have taken care of, and you didn't.
Sure didn't.
Go ahead and like, my condolences, because Rutgers to the Rose Bowl, it's got to be dead, right?
Yeah,
it's got to be over. Yeah, negative Shianos this week.
Yeah, I think I even tweeted out after the start of the second half. We're at -5 Shianos now. I have 0 words after that. I was in a terrible mood all Friday night. There are so many things we could take up the rest of this podcast just discussing.
Yeah, we're not going to do that.
And I'm exhausted. Like you said, it was one of those teams they should have beat. If we were in the West, we'd still somehow be up there to close to the top, which is a whole separate thing. They did fire their offensive coordinator, and then they hired a guy named Nunzio, which is, in fact, how many more wins they will get this season. Nunzio.
That's good. Put that on a T-shirt. You got Ben to laugh. That means
Thank you so much. Good. My mission here is done.
So at this point, it's still Rutgers to the Rose Bowl. It's really Rutgers to any bowl.
No, please.
At this point. No, you
let
can't.
The season die.
I would just like to point out, I've never been around another human being whose Friday night was ruined because Rutgers lost a football game.
Welcome. My name's Josh, JP. It happens all the time, mostly on Saturdays.
That's crazy.
I have never been.
How are you just not used to this by now?
I was so excited for a Friday night Rutgers game. Like, the clock hit 7. I was like, oh,
I'm so sorry.
Team's coming out of the tunnel. I got to turn the game on. And then it just went down.
The environment was cool. The first half was sick.
The pregame was really inspiring. And
that's
then
about as much excitement as I've had with a Rutgers football game in years. So
Rutgers is what, 3-3?
3-3.
So you
need 3 wins.
You need 3 wins. You still play Indiana. A possibility. You play
chance.
Michigan State. That's a possibility. And then you play some really good teams, and you're going to have to steal one, and it's probably going to have to be against Minnesota. So good luck to you.
Who currently has the #1 total defense in college football.
You could play a plastic bag at this point. Like, it would still give you guys a run for the money.
I hate this so much.
Listen, I do too. We've said, like, if and when they make the Rose Bowl game, I don't care if I'm 70 years old. We're going to Pasadena.
I'll be there.
We're going to go enjoy that football. They're going to wear their all whites.
They'll be out of the Big Ten by then.
The R on the helmet is going to be with like little rose petals and stuff on it. It's going to be really cool.
Look, the dream is cool.
We've got it.
Reality.
Can we make merch even if they don't go?
We should.
Can we?
We should.
If any lawyers are watching this, we're joking, and we would never go to prepsportswear.com and design our own.
It's not just a game, it's the game. You're listening to The Rivalry.
Let's talk Michigan. Michigan plays Indiana. Tight first half, completely different second half. And before we get into it, really, we'd be remiss to not mention something that I think affected the first half, which was obviously Mike Hart, running back coach, former Michigan player, collapsing on the sideline. It was confirmed he had a seizure during that game. But did see this morning, again, recording on Monday, that Mike said that he is stable. He's doing reasonably well. He hopes to be back in Ann Arbor, joining with the team very, very soon. That's really good news, football aside. That was a really scary situation. And glad to see him doing well. Prayers up for him. Hope that he's able to be healthy and then get back to coaching as soon as he reasonably can. My assessment of the Michigan-Indiana game actually starts there, because Michigan started off fast in just about every game that they've been part of. But once Hart went down, it felt like the entire focus, the entire energy of the team shifted. And that's not trying to say, hey, like that's the reason why it was close against Indiana. But I feel like that's got to affect you as a football player, especially guys like Corum and Edwards, to go, our coach that we're closest with just collapsed on the side. Like, I don't know. It seemed like the entire energy went out for Michigan. It was sloppy, penalties left and right. Some of them I thought were terrible. Some of them were just self-inflicted wounds. And then the second half happened, and the defensive adjustment by Jesse Minter was fantastic. I thought they also let J.J. McCarthy go out and start slinging the ball around a little bit more. It felt like they had kept him really contained in the first half and then said, go off script, do what you want to do. And I thought he answered the call. His first 300-plus yard passing game, 3 touchdowns. And the defense got to, what's-his-face from Indiana about 7 times.
Mazlak.
Thank you. Seven sacks, I think somewhere around 25 quarterback pressures. It changed the game around. Indiana's second half drives were punt, turnover on downs.
That's pretty solid.
It's pretty good. So yeah, from my perspective, I've got very few concerns from the first half of football that I saw. I think there's a lot of X factors going on there. But what did you see as Buckeye fans from that game?
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I mean, obviously Hart going down like that takes away your focus. It's a distraction. You're more worried about whether he's fine, getting updates. So I definitely think that played a factor. The defense was super impressive. These are the kind of games from McCarthy that I expect on a consistent basis moving forward. These are the kind of games that he needs to have to move him just to where he's in that Heisman potential that we've talked about on here. Yeah, I mean, Indiana, their offense was atrocious. It's so tough to really get a read on either Ohio State or Michigan because the level of competition. The defense came out and did what we expected it to. The quarterback pressures and everything have been there all season long. They are just a dominant force. I just want to see some competition against an actual offense. Maryland's about the only one.
Yeah.
And we saw what kind of happened there.
Which really, I'd even say in that one, the defense actually played pretty well.
Yeah.
But I'm with you there. Ben, what do you think?
How much of the first half would you think potentially was we're looking ahead to Penn State?
I wondered that too. I don't know. I'd like to think that especially the way Harbaugh runs his teams, that they're pretty focused in on the game. But they're also 18 to 22-year-olds. Like, it's got to be difficult to say, hey, we're going to go into this game, but we're kind of looking at what's coming up. For that matter, I feel like you could say the same thing about Bama and A&M this past week. Mm-hmm. Like, there's obviously some tension between coaches, but you're going to Knoxville the week after. Yeah, you're going to look past them a little bit. So I think probably a combination of a little bit looking past them. I think, and again, it sounds like a complaint, and I guess it is. I thought penalties kept Indiana's drives alive, and I had some severe questions about some of those calls. And I think the coaching thing too. But also, you've also got to execute. You've also got to execute and overcome. So I think it was a pretty bad first half.
Yeah. And I mean, the second half, they were who we thought they were.
There it is. Thank you for that.
IU is terrible. I live an hour from Bloomington. The fans don't care except for the season ticket holders. Like, I've been to an Ohio State IU game and saw
Does it feel like a home game?
Half the stadium empty, and they're broadcasting a sellout. Like, they're bad. They're a bad football team. And so
you heard it here first on the Rivalry podcast. Indiana basketball.
They're also
sums
bad.
It up. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, the team up north they're going to hand the ball.
You can call them Michigan.
I'm not going to.
Man.
I think I did accidentally at the very beginning.
You're going to slip up. We'll check the tape.
So, yeah, I mean, they're going to hand it to Blake Corum 1,000 times. He's going to do what he does. And I actually thought at the end of this game, they were getting JJ short touchdown passes that they could have been giving to Blake Corum potentially to steal a Heisman later in the year.
Yeah, true. Yeah, and that's the I think he's on the the odds for the Heisman, I think Corum is somewhere in the 4th, 5th range right now, which again is nice. That's not, you can't get too focused on that, but he has looked good. And yeah, that's going to be the bread and butter for Michigan, but it's different this year than last year because again, where McNamara was serviceable game manager, JJ can blow things open. And that's where, if you're Michigan, you want to see them take the next step from just, we're going to hand it off because you can't stop it, which if that's true, late November last year said it was. But now you've also got a dynamic offense where you can throw the ball vertically, throw it down the field, that sort of thing. Competition steps up this week. Michigan is going to, I think one of the Penn State beats said, time to put on your big boy pants. And that's the way that is for Michigan this week too. So before I give kind of my in-house analysis, if you will, what are you looking at for Michigan Penn State, JP?
I'll let you start.
Yeah, so
Ben came prepared with notes, which is really, really cool. We don't have notes.
The team up north versus Penn State. So when I broke it down, Clifford and McCarthy are almost identical passing this season, which might surprise you. It might surprise you. I'm talking stat numbers.
Thanks so much, Ben. It's been great having you.
So JJ's thrown about 100 more yards. That's it. And then they've both thrown 9 touchdowns. Clifford's thrown 2 picks. JJ's thrown 1. And the difference is really completion percentage. Clifford's thrown for 62%, but JJ's thrown for 78%. Now, defensively, Michigan and Penn State have the 6th and 7th ranked pass defenses in the country. Michigan is currently 5th in total defense. Penn State 38th. I'm not sure how they necessarily get this because Penn State is also 5th in rush defense and Michigan is 7th. Now, the difference in our running backs here, Blake Corum, 6.2 yards a carry, averaging 131 yards a game. And then Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, who are the kind of the two-headed monster for Penn State, 7.3 and 5.3. So we're looking at teams that on paper, stat-wise, seem to be very similar. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be a matter of who makes more like splash plays when it matters. Yeah. And so, I mean, if we want to go straight into predictions.
Do it, man.
I've got team up north beating Penn State 28-24 because I think it's going to be a healthy dose of hand it to Blake Corum, and then JJ is going to make enough plays with his feet to kind of get that 3rd and long, and JJ runs for 17.
I don't think my heart can handle that prediction. I don't like that. I reject that.
You're not going to like mine. All right.
Penn State by 1,000.
Don't do something dumb.
You should
do something dumb.
You should be proud of me. I looked
You're
hard.
going to hate this, but you should be proud of me.
You'll hate because of the stress of it. I'll knock my prediction out early, but then I'll tell you why. Fine. I've got a prediction 21-17 Michigan winning.
Okay.
My prediction, like you were saying, Penn State's coming in with one of the best rush defenses. I'm so curious to see what happens with Blake Corum going into this. I would have switched it if it was at Penn State. I think Penn State would have gotten the job done. I think them being at Michigan will be the difference maker here. This is the game that I've been wanting to watch Michigan go up against. An actual tough opponent for finally, where we get to I feel like I'm actually going to get a good glimpse at what we should expect to see in Columbus.
I think that's fair.
Thanksgiving weekend. That's why I'm so excited for it.
Because Penn State's a team that's balanced on both sides of the ball, where Maryland has offense but no defense. Iowa has defense but no offense.
A pretty good offense, a good rushing defense. I feel like
it feels like a legitimate top 10 team.
It's a legit team. And so I just feel like it'll be a closer game than people think, a little bit lower scoring than I feel like a lot of people might think.
I hate that. You're right. That was terrible. I am so nervous about this football game. I was telling Ben off mic as well that I don't put a lot of stock in who's at home versus who's away, but there are exceptions, and Penn State's one of the exceptions where it does matter where that game gets played. Now, I'll also say by that same token, Michigan went into Happy Valley and beat them in a low-scoring defensive battle last year. Shout out to Eric All for like a 55-yard mesh route that went for a touchdown. I think this game is going to come. I don't disagree that's going to come down to defense. I think there will be more points scored in this game than either of you guys think. But I think defense is probably where the game gets decided. So I'm seeing Michigan really load up the box and really send the pass rush we're going to take away the running game. That's the defensive strategy, I think, for Michigan. We're going to make, I want to say Trace McSorley, because they're all the same quarterback.
The same guy.
It's the same guy.
Trace is just a much better runner than Sean Clifford.
The battered shell of Sean Clifford.
What if
it's going to have to throw the ball.
Alternate universe, Will Levis was still there.
Wow. That'd be something.
Because he was a Penn State throwaway.
Oh, he threw it away. I watched him throw it away right into the waiting hands of Michigan secondary several times.
And now he might be the number one pick in the draft.
My gosh, that's incredible. Detroit, if the Lions are watching this, don't do that. Please don't. CJ will be available. Go ahead and take him. That's for a different time. No, I think Michigan's going to force Clifford to throw the ball. And I'm kind of with you, Ben, on I don't think that he can make more plays than McCarthy can. I think McCarthy's a much better quarterback. And I think if Michigan can take away the run game, which I think they can, their defense has been really, really good this year. I just don't think Penn State's got enough in the tank to hang with Michigan. And I do think that playing this game at home, I do think that matters. Michigan's been on the road the last 2 weeks. They're going to have a tough environment at the end of November. But I think that playing this game at the Big House is going to be a win for Michigan. I have 34-20 because I do think Michigan can put some points up on them. I don't think it's a blowout by any stretch. I think this game stays close all the way through, and I think Michigan ends up pulling it out at the end and kind of pulling away near the end there. So we all took Michigan, which is good. This is where,
in my heart of hearts, I took Penn State.
But that doesn't matter because that's not what you said. In his heart of hearts, Ben took Penn State too.
Here's the thing. I want the team up north to lose every game by 100.
Thank you. See, I respect that.
I don't go into I want both teams to be undefeated at the end of the season.
Not even a little bit.
No.
Not even a little bit.
I want them to lose by 1,000 every single week.
I don't understand the whole, I understand in one sense the whole, I'd love for these teams to be top 5 at the end of the year. But also, I hope you go 0-11.
I'm the opposite.
This is the same thing that with Michigan State. It's do I want a top 10 Michigan matchup? No. I hope that Mel Tucker continues doing Mel Tucker things. And by the way, lost again, obviously, and is signed to a 10-year, $95 million contract. They play Wisconsin this week for those playing along at home, and they will lose that game because they are terrible. Upset picks of the week. We call this stupid genius, and it's been more stupid than genius since the initial App State over A&M pick. Things have just been bad. Things have gone downhill. I'm not gonna lie to you, I almost picked Penn State as my upset of the week just because that guarantees it won't happen. I didn't do that. JP, I'm gonna let you start. Well, Ben, you came prepared for this too, didn't you?
I was doing my research as we were starting the recording.
Guests first. You go ahead.
So I'm surprised that Oklahoma is a 7-point favorite against Kansas, who lost one game this season, close.
That is surprising.
To a ranked TCU team.
Yeah.
And it was a throw away from tying the game, right? If I remember correctly. So I think Kansas will beat Oklahoma.
I like that.
I picked someone else, Tennessee over Alabama, but that's 6 versus 3 in the country. So not too much of an upset there.
I like the Rock Chalk pick. Is a solid one. I don't think Oklahoma. I'm surprised that Oklahoma is a touchdown. They are.
I saw they broke a 311 game scoring streak last week when Quinn Ewers, former Ohio State player who handed the ball off twice in his career.
Are we claiming him now? That's cool.
I'm not.
That's cool. That's fine.
I'm actually not claiming him. I actually think what he did was kind of low, but that's for a different conversation later.
JP?
I'm going Florida State over number 4 Clemson.
No, you're not.
100%. Book it.
JP, anytime that we have picked the same
what did I tell you?
Pick of the week,
I literally said before we came in to record, when I was doing my research, I looked at you and I said, I know exactly who you're going to pick.
No, you don't.
Am I wrong?
Florida State over Clemson.
I knew it. He couldn't resist.
We need this to happen. We can't keep picking these. Clemson is a fraud. We know Clemson's a fraud.
I think Clemson's another one of those teams that both fan sides of the fanhood or whatever can agree on. When they lose, it is just so sweet.
It's delightful. It's really fun. It's not as fun as Alabama losing.
Yes.
But it's still an enjoyable afternoon.
100%.
I'm really frustrated with you.
I knew it was going to happen.
I'm really because I said, well, I'm going to choose one of these. And I think Tennessee over Bama is still an upset pick.
Yeah, I would
I think Tennessee's right now 7.5 point dogs.
Something like that.
Okay.
It's like a touchdown.
So maybe I'll do that. I'm going to.
No, I also was a toss up between Kansas and Oklahoma. So I know you thought about it.
I crossed out Florida State. I'm taking Tennessee over Alabama. Really taking Florida State over Clemson. Thanks for following along this podcast. By the way, if you have a score prediction for Michigan and Penn State, Ohio State on a bye this week, make sure you tweet at RivalPod on Twitter or on Instagram at 1049 The River. You could win lunch from someplace. I don't know. I don't have the sheet in front of me. We'll buy you lunch from somewhere. It's a gift card of some kind. It's delightful. Why are you wearing those?
Go Bucks, baby.
You don't need to put those sunglasses on.
He's welcome every week.
Is this the Urban Meyer thing where you're wearing sunglasses and no one knows why?
Best thing about 6-0.
Don't do that.
Chance to go 7-0.
Chance to go 7-0.
Not
Go
here.
Bucks, baby.
Thanks for listening and subscribing.
The Rivalry is a production of River Radio Ministries. Want live updates from the show? Follow us on Twitter at RivalPod for live tweets, score predictions, contests, and more. And make sure to follow us wherever you're listening now for new episodes every Wednesday. And if you like what you're hearing, tell a friend so they can listen too.